Hey there, my name's Drew Brashler, and in this video, I want to talk about if you have a P16 monitoring system and it doesn't have enough channels for you, I have a new solution for you that Behringer just released, and it is called the P24. Now, if you're brand new to my channel, I am all about helping you feel more confident with your production gear no matter where you're starting from. Now, also, if you are on a path about learning more about audio engineering and audio, I have a weekly newsletter over at audiotoolkit.co that I send out my favorite tips and tricks weekly into your inbox for free. So head over to audiotoolkit.co and check that out. But let's go ahead and dive in and see what the P24 system is all about. Now, if you were like me and have the X32 or the Behringer Wing, the P16 has a limit. And that's because it only has 16 mono channels. Now, if you want to have some stereo channels, you have to link them on each unit, and it's kind of a pain. So you can only get 8 stereo channels on the P16, which honestly, this is a great solution for a lot of venues, and churches, and bands out there. But Behringer is now releasing a newer version of this called the P24. This is the P24 Mixer, and it is 12 stereo channels or 24 mono inputs. And there's a couple different ways that we can actually configure those 24 mono inputs if you are wanting to go that way. And I will be releasing a video about the channel settings that you can set up on your P24 and how to get the most out of it. So check out that video if you want to learn more about that. But by default, the P24 is set up with 12 stereo channels, which is fantastic. Now there's also a P24 Hub. Now the P24 Hub allows you to power 8 of these devices off of XLR cables. And these XLR cables are using Stage Connect. Now remember, Stage Connect allows you to send up to 32 channels down an XLR cable. Now this should be a data style XLR, like a DMX cable, but sometimes you can get away with just using a simple XLR. But the distance of this does need to be less than 40 meters in the total length from your P24 Hub. So just keep that in mind. But the P24 Hub allows you to power 8 of these devices directly from the P24 Hub. Now, if you were wanting to have more devices than just that, you definitely can daisy chain out and then add the individual power supplies that do come with the P24 mixers if you wanted to do that. Now, if you wanted to have a simple setup and not use a P24 Hub, you could also connect your Behringer Wing Stage Connect out into a P24 mixer and then just daisy chain and link them to all the remaining units that you have, remembering that the max length can be 40 meters. And if you are reaching that 40-meter length, it's recommended to use a DMX style 3-pin cable. But if you do decide to power the units directly off of the Stage Connect interface off the back of your wing, then you would definitely want to add the DC power supplies later on in the chain. But let's talk about how we actually get this thing working with the Behringer Wing. Now, I am going to be releasing some more videos about getting the most out of the P24 system, but I want to talk about how we can get this routed with the P24 Hub right now. Now, the P24 Hub allows us to integrate the P24 ecosystem with a Behringer Wing, a Behringer X32, or a Behringer X-Air, including the Midas series. So the Midas M32 or the Midas M-Air, those consoles can also work. Now, if we are using the P24 Hub with the Behringer Wing, then we can connect in multiple different ways. We can utilize the Stage Connect, giving us 32 channels between our wing and the P24 Hub. My favorite way, however, is using the AES50 connection. So you can have an AES50 connection off of the back of your wing or your Behringer X32 and be able to feed your channels directly into the hub using that AES50 line. Now, the other great thing about using the AES50 line is there's more returns coming back from the P24 Hub, which I'll talk about here in a little bit. Now, so on the front of the P24 Hub, there is a source select button to be able to switch between our Stage Connect and our AES50 options, as well as Ultranet. So you people with the X-Air or that are wanting to feed this off of, say, a S32 or an S16 or a DL32 or a DL16, you can use the Ultranet out of your console or the stage box and feed that into the Ultranet in on your P24 Hub. So if you are wanting to utilize this with an X-Air series or the M-Air series mixer, you definitely can. Now moving to the back of the P24 Hub, we have on the far right 16 mono TRS outputs. Now by default, this is my favorite thing about the P24 Hub, is these are the mix outs out of the P24 system. So if you are connecting, say, up to 8 of these P24 mixers into your P24 Hub, you can actually take the mix outs directly off these TRS outputs and toss them into a wireless in-ear pack, for instance. So then you can have the P24 mixer sitting at the musician, but then they can be using a wireless in-ear setup, and you can integrate that off the back of the P24 Hub. Now you will notice there is a 1.1 and a 1.2, and then it moves to 2.1 and then 2.2. Well, on the front of our P24 Hub, there are 4 XLR or Stage Connect outputs, meaning that you can power 2 of these P24 mixers per output. And so the first P24 that would be on port 1 would represent 1.1. And then if you daisy change out of the first P24 into another P24, then that would be 1.2. And then on the second port, the first unit would be 1.1, the second unit would be 2.2, and so on and so forth for our 3 and our output 4. So you can keep that in mind with all of the routing that you want to do on the back of this P24 Hub. Now the other ports on the back of the P24 are going to be for our inputs into the P24 system. So we have our Stage Connect, followed by our Ultranet, and then our AES50 lines. So looking at our routing for our AES50 side, I'm going to go ahead and navigate over to my outputs and see my AES50C, which is where I have my P24 connected. Now on my AES50 connections, on the P24 Hub, I can select between using 25 and 48 or 33 and 48. And so for me, I'm wanting to select it to be the 25 through 48. And that is going to give me my 24 channels or 12 stereo pairs for my different channels on my P24 mixer. So if we route any channels to 25 and 26, this would be the stereo pair on our fader 1 here. And then if we routed a set of channels to 27 and 28, that would be my next fader, so my fader 2. Now remember, by default, these are set into stereo. Now there is an option inside of the P24 mixer that allows us to choose between mono, so you can just mono both inputs, or you can do a blend. It's called a dual mono. So say you had a click and a cue. Well, you could send your click and cue down the 2 channels, and then using this dual mono mode, you can have the musician blend between the click and the cue on the volume, and then both of those channels would then share that single fader, but you do have the ability of blending between the click channel and the cue channel, which I will show you guys here in a little bit later in this video. Now, one other thing that I want to mention is that on the P24 mixer, not only do you have these 12 channels of faders, but you also have a talkback volume. Now, what's great about the talkback is that we can route our talkback mic from our console to the P24 utilizing our 23 and 24. So 23 and 24 are both a talkback send to the P24 system when we're utilizing our AES50. Now this does bring them into mono. So if you have your front of house talkback mic, I can toss that on 23. And then maybe we have an MD talkback mic that's on a wired microphone sitting up on stage. We could actually route that to 24. And then there's a blend of these 2 mics in a mono sense when we turn up and down this talkback volume on the actual mixer, which is very, very cool. Now, one other thing I want to mention about the talkback section is each P24 has a talkback button here that we can actually use as a talkback to get to front of house or talk to the entire P24 monitoring system. So there are two microphones that are built into each P24, and if we press and hold Talkback, then it's actually going to utilize those microphones and talk to the P24 monitoring system and your console if you have it set up. The other cool thing is on the back of the P24 Mixer, there is a Talkback input. So if you wanted to have a wired microphone, you definitely can use that wired microphone as your Talkback. And then for your MDs or drummers or keyboardists who are wanting to utilize that Talkback, but maybe have both of your hands being used all the time, there is a Footswitch connection on the P24 Mixer that allows you to go ahead and toggle your Talkback via a Footswitch. Now again, this Talkback would talk to all of the P24 system that's connected to your P24 Hub, or if you're daisy chaining multiple of the units together just using Stage Connect, it will also talk to all of those P24 systems that are on that Stage Connect line. So let's actually get some of our channels routed to our P24 system. Now, my favorite way of doing this is utilizing our user patch and user routing inside of your Behringer Wing. And so we can go to sources and we can go drop our source group down into user signal. And then what's great is we have 24 user signals that we can end up pulling from the console. Now, what's great about these user signals is it allows you to pull off of our channels, either on a pre-fader tap or a tap that's configured on your sends section of that channel. We could do post-fader, or we can also select between left plus right. We can do left, or we can do right. And it also gives us the ability of flipping the polarity on these channels, which is great. So with my first channel here, I'm going to set this up as kick. Now I have two microphones. I have a kick out and a kick in. The kick out obviously gets the body, and the kick in gets more of the snap that happens when the kick drum is being hit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the P24 system utilize that dual mono setup, and I'm going to send both my kick out and my kick in on channels 1 and 2. So on user 1, I'm going to have my kick out, and then I'm going to go to my user 2 and assign my channel of kick in. Now, these are all set to tap, which means if I go to my channel and I go to my output section here, I can see where the tap point is coming from. So I can change this on a channel by channel basis. And so I am having this come after my gate, EQ, and compression, which is great. So they're getting all my processing for my channels into their P24 system. Going back to the routing and dropping to user signals. So I have my kick out, I have my kick in. And also, if you want to organize this in a better way, what you can do is you can go and rename each of these. So I can call this kick, and then this is also going to be kick. Now on my user 3 and 4, that's going to be my next set of channels for my channel 2. I'm actually going to set this up as a drum group. So I'm going to send my snare, my toms, and my overheads all to a mix bus on my console, and then send the output of that mix bus to my user signal to go to my P24s. So on my bus masters, I already have a drum bus here set up as it's titled P16 drums. And so we can go and check this out. And I'm actually going to rename this to be P24. P24 drums. Cool. So we have this mix bus set up, and this is on mix bus 10. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up 10, go to my drums, and we can see that I have my kick in and my kick out muted and turned down, and then I have a pre-fader send for all the rest of my drums. So I have that already set up. So let's go ahead and get that routed. And so we have user 3, and this is going to be coming from my buses, and this is going to be my P24 drums, and I'm going to select left, and then I'm going to go to this one, and I'm going to select P24 drums, and that's going to be right. Now my next channel I have is electric guitar, so I'm going to go to my electric guitar, and I'm going to go from my channels and choose my electric guitar 1, and that's going to be left, and my electric guitar 2, or sorry, my electric guitar 1 and right. So drums, electric guitar, and then on the next one we have acoustic. So this can be mono because it's a mono acoustic guitar. So I would either send to both channels and just leave it be stereo, or I can configure on the P24 to have it be a mono setup. But in this case, I'm just going to send the acoustic guitar twice because that's easy. And then on 5, we have bass. So we are going to route our bass, and that is also mono. So I'm just going to send both channels. And then we have piano. So keys left, and then keys right. And then we have our tracks. So our tracks are going to be 13 and 14, which come right here. So left, and tracks 2, right. Okay, and then 8, 9, 10, and 11, we aren't really using any of those. But 12, this is where I'm wanting to have my click and my cue. So on user 23, I'm going to have this coming from my click. And then on user 24, I'm going to have this from my cue. Now this gives the ability for the musicians to be able to blend between those, or if they leave it straight up in the middle, it's going to be getting both of them at an equal volume. And I'll show you that setup here in a little bit. Now the next thing that I want to make sure that I have routed is my talkback mic. Now there is an MD talkback. It is a wired microphone sitting on the side of the stage, and they are not using a P24 system. So we have just a wired microphone. And then I also have my front of house talkback microphone. So let's go ahead and add those in as well. So on user 21, I'm going to go and pull up my aux channel, which is my talkback. And then on my user 22, I am going to go and pull from my channel, my MD talkback. Now, one thing about the talkback is we will want to have this set as post for our talkback mic. Notice that if this is set to tap, this microphone is going through because this is my front of house talkback, but I don't have my talk buttons pressed. So if I set this to post, then whenever I activate my talkback button, it will actually do what I need it to. So we want to always make sure that that is set to post. So we can go ahead and rename this if we want to. So FOH talkback. And then next channel is the MD talkback. Okay, now that we have our user patching set, let's go ahead and go over to our AES50 sends and get this routed. So we go to outputs, we pull up our AES50C, and then on 25, this is where we start pulling from our channels. So this is kick, these were drums, and then we can just continue to route the rest of the channels. Now, remember, on my 47 and 48 was going to be my click and my cue. And then my talkback sends from the console would be on 23 and 24. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up my front of house talkback and my MD talkback. Now, the minute that you do that, we are automatically sending all of our channels to our P24 system. So if I grab my talkback microphone and I press my talkback mic, we can see that this green talk button is lit up because I am talking to the band, which is fantastic. Additionally, if the MD was to use their talkback, which is a switched 58 or something like that, it would go to that talkback. And this is an independent volume per mixer, which is great. So on our P24, let's jump over and check out the outputs on the back of our P24 system so we can understand this a little bit better. As we can see, we have our headphone out as well as a line out. Now the headphone out obviously is where we would plug in our headphones with a 1/4-inch jack. And then the line out is a mono sum of your mix that you could use for a floor wedge if you were utilizing a floor wedge. We also have a Footswitch connection for activating our talkback, as well as a stereo TRS aux in. So we can utilize that line as an additional input into our dedicated mixer if we wanted to do that. On the other side of our P24, we have our stage connect as well as a DC power supply input if we were needing to power that for additional devices. So looking at the front of our unit, we have our 12 faders here, followed by an aux mic. Now this is pretty cool because the microphones that are built into our P24, we can actually turn that up and listen to the room. So say we are in a rehearsal and we just finished a song and we wanted to talk to each other, I could go reach over and turn that up and listen to the room sound. Now, the other cool thing about utilizing the P24 Hub is that it sends our mixes back through the AES50 and it shows up on our board. So if I jump over to my sources and look at AES50C, I've actually titled these. So here is my P24 1.1. And this is a stereo line. And then we have our P24 1.2. So this is our second set of P24. And then this is port 2 and port 2.2. And there is the first set of 3, the second set of 3, and here is the fourth port. So we get all 8 of our stereo mixes from our P24 back into the mixer. So if you needed to utilize, say, a set of XLR outputs on a stage box, then you could go ahead and route these to the outputs of the stage box. And again, that's what's great about the Behringer Wing, is that there's so much flexibility with our input sources and our output destinations. Then the other cool thing is the built-in talkback to these units actually comes down channel 47 of our AES50. So if we wanted to be able to listen to that at front of house, we could toss this into, say, an aux channel and have that come into our monitors and be able to listen to that during our show or during the rehearsal or whatever. Now then the other thing is, as I turn this aux mic up, we can see that if I scratch this, we can see that we have our channel volume here. And so I've actually brought that back into a channel here so we can go ahead and listen to a mix that I create off of this P24. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this up. And as I bring this up, we are hearing more of the room noise. That's great. So we can hear my neighbor in their office that's laughing and some of the room noise of the heat, because outside we have quite a lot of snow and ice, which is super fun here in Kentucky. So I have the ability of bringing my mix back into my console so you guys can hear that. So that's what I'm doing here. So let's go ahead and start getting some signals into our P24 system so that we can actually start mixing some of this and getting a mix set up. Okay, so we have some audio playing into this, and if I go ahead and turn up the kick, we're going to start hearing that. So we are hearing the kick out on the left side and the kick in on the right side. And so if I go ahead and press into this one, I can change the mode of this channel. So I have pressed into this channel 1, and currently it's set to stereo. Now if I rotate this knob, I can set it to mono, so we heard that just collapse to a mono mix. Now this is a perfect blend of the two channels. But there's one more setting that I have here. So we could go to dual mode, and this is a mono, but it allows us to change the blend between the left and the right side. So let's go ahead and get out of this by pressing and holding. And then I have this kick selected here, and then I can now blend between the kick out, which is nice and dark, or the kick in, which is nice and bright. So we can hear that. And so I can blend between the two of these. Now I can do this on a channel by channel basis. So if I was wanting to send 24 mono channels to this P24 system, I can set every single one of these to be a dual mono, or that dual mode, and then blend between those two inputs. Now the only downside is I'm not able to pan this once I finish. So once I finish, I wouldn't be able to pan this kick, left or right. Not that you would want to pan a kick. And so I have my channel 2 as my drums. Now this is set up as a stereo blend of all of the drums. So we can hear a nice drum mix there. And then we have our electric guitar. Now I could go ahead and start panning this. So maybe the electric guitarist is sitting to my left. I could go ahead and pan that slightly. Next is our acoustic guitar, and he is on the right side of the stage. There we go. And my next channel is my bass guitar. Got our piano and our tracks. Go ahead and restart this song here. Now remember, on our channel 12, I had the click and the cue, so I can go ahead and pull that up. Now this is having the click on the left side and our cue on the right side. So if I press and hold into channel 12, I can change this mode to be that dual mode, and then I have the ability of mixing between the cue and the click. So that would be all of the cue, that would be all of the click. And then I'll also, remember, have my aux mic sound that I could go ahead and bring in. And I could add that if I was wanting to hear some of the room noise during a show, or in between those songs, I could go ahead and bring in that aux mic in to listen to the room in between those songs. Now, if I was wanting to add an additional P24, so I got my other P24 here, I'm gonna go ahead and just daisy chain out of the back of my first P24 mixer. So I'm going to go and connect my XLR here into the output of the first unit, and then plug that into the input of our Stage Connect. Now, once I do this, I do want to do one button press on the front of the P24 Hub, and that's pressing and holding our through button, which rescans and allows the P24 Hub to find all of the units that are connected to it. So whenever you connect a P24 mixer to your P24 Hub, it's always a great idea to press and hold the through button to rescan for the devices. And as we can see, both of my units are now powered on. Now, I was talking about the talkback mic. Well, we have the ability of just pressing and talking into our talkback, and we can hear that that is coming in right here on our P24. So we can see, as I'm touching this, we can hear that talkback mic. Now then, one other thing, and I'm gonna go ahead and press play on my music here so we can hear this. One other great thing about the talkback is that there is a talkback dim setting inside of the menu structure of the P24. So if I press and hold this, it's actually going to attenuate my mix so that I can hear that MD asking those things of us. So check 1, 2, check 1, 2, and then when I undo the talkback, it'll bring the mix back up. Now, if I was wanting to adjust this, what I can do is I can press and hold my channel settings knob, and then press until I get to my talkback dim. And I can go ahead and adjust this down more. So if I wanted to have a 20 decibel drop, then when someone goes and presses the talkback mic, it'll bring that down a lot. Or if I wasn't wanting to have any of that dim, what I can do is I can go find my talkback dim and set this to 0. And then if someone goes and talks into their talkback, check 1, 2, check 1, 2, it's keeping my mix still the same. Now, I am super excited about the P24 system, and I'm so happy that Behringer has expanded on their mixer series for their personal mixers, because this is going to give a lot of musicians the mix that they're looking for of having so many stereo sources. Now, if you do happen to have any questions, or there's a video that you're hoping that I would make on the P24 system, or really any of the other production equipment that's out there, please drop that in the comment section down below, as I'm always reading through those comments to find videos that are going to be helpful for you. If you haven't already, make sure to check out my website at drewbrashler.com, where I have some presets and templates available for the Behringer Wing, the Behringer X-Air series, and the Behringer X32 series of effects and channel presets and some scene templates as well. So go check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.